passing by one day at a time, walking on through this crazy life. I just thought that I would let you come see a piece of this world according to me.
In a wide variety of situations, do you ever wonder, is it just me? I have a sense that I'm not the only one who has those moments, feeling like her opinions or ideas are something so totally out there. Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Farrell. This show will not only focus on the good, but also highlight the many businesses, charities, teams, and human beings who actively try to make a positive difference in whichever community they find themselves. Be inspired, be hopeful, but most of all, be entertained. I pray every single moment of my life, not on my knees, but with my work. My prayer is to lift women to equality with men. Work and worship are one with me. Those words stated by women's rights and voting advocate pioneer Susan B. Anthony. I've always been a girl power type of chick. Whether it was my glory days out on the soccer field or just always sticking up for another gal at school. For me, it's consistently making sure that we ladies don't get forgotten, left behind, or pushed to the side. Likewise, I have been on the receiving end of the giving, caring, sharing. Female relatives, friends, mentors, and professors. When ladies join together, there is no force in nature stronger. Viewing through the lens of mainstream media and society as a whole, it'd be quite simple to just throw our hands up and shake our collective heads thinking, well, this is as good as it's gonna get. Today's young girls especially, it truly seems like they can't catch a break or find an admirable role model to truly idolize. Mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends, this month's show was crafted just for you. Growing up in Hopedale, I obviously knew what the big old brick building across from the pond was, Draper Mill. What I was never aware of was the astonishingly wide reach and diversity of the entire Draper Corporation. Never could I have imagined the various social movements so ingrained in this utopian society. Lead historian of the Hopedale Women's History Project, Linda Hixon, joins me today. Linda, thank you so much for joining me in studio today. I'm so happy that we're able to have not just a ladies book club chit chat, but as the lead historian of the Hopedale Women's History Project, I couldn't think of a more fitting guest to invite up here.
Well, I appreciate your inviting me, Ryan. I really do. Hopedale history, all history is really important to me, but Hopedale history, and particularly Hopedale women's history, is important to me, although I've kind of strayed from that recently in doing the Draper books, but that's good too, because women worked there too.
Yeah. And as I read in your fantastic book, which I'll have to have you autograph for me at the end of this, Symbol of Progress, this lovely right here, I learned that it wasn't just the mill workers and the head honcho drapers, 8 in Blue or anything like that, who really kick-started Hopedale. And again, I've lived here for over 31 years, my whole entire life, and I did not even know a good portion of everything I learned in your first book. So, what would you say most surprises you about everything you've learned over the years about this town and the Draper Corporation as a whole?
Well, the town and the Drapers, I think, two separate things, because the town started as this religious experiment. They wanted to try and make their own social community, their own experiment, and they believed in equality for all. You know, not just men, and not just white men, but this was women, this was people of color. It's awesome. And so for the town, that's one thing. The Draper Company is a little different, because by the time that's becoming a powerhouse, the Hopedale community is gone. It's gone. But Draper doesn't become a powerhouse until about the 1890s. And we think of the Hopedale community as disappearing when the Draper brothers take over the town, Ebenezer and George Draper, in 1856, and that's not true. The community kept going until the 1870s. But then it kind of petered out. And the Draper Company wasn't quite as inclusive as the Hopedale community had been. They insist around 1908 that they never hired women, and yet we know women worked there. And they insist they didn't hire children, and yet we know kids as young as like 10 or 12 worked there. So it's all been a surprise. That's what I love about history. You're always surprised.
And I feel like no matter how many times you read and reread the history books, or how many exploration excursions you go on, you'll find something new and unknown. And I think that's one of the reasons why history, growing up all throughout from my early days at Milford Catholic Elementary School all the way up through advanced placement U.S. history my junior year of high school, history was probably my favorite subject.
Oh, yeah.
And my American Girl dolls, my sister and I had all 6, between the two of us, we had these 6 OG AGs, original American Girl dolls. And that was our favorite. Historical fiction was always, and then nonfiction history too. And that would have been interesting to have a Draper little lady American Girl doll, don't you think?
I think it would. And the neat part about Hopedale, there's a young woman who grows up in Hopedale. She moves there when she's 8. Her name is Lizzie Humphrey. And she became an illustrator. And she illustrated for a book that was called the American Girl series in the 1870s.
Stop it.
Oh, no, it's true. I actually, if I'd known that you were going to bring that up, I would have brought my copy, because I bought a copy off of eBay.
Oh, my goodness.
That Lizzie illustrated. She didn't write the books, but she illustrated them.
Well, the pictures speak 1,000 words, I think, a lot,
they do.
Especially with books like that. And speaking of pictures and photographs, some of the photographs you share in Symbol of Progress, they are astounding.
They are. They're astounding because the Drapers took a ton of pictures. They were so proud of what they were doing. A lot of them, particularly the early pictures pre-1920, are from glass negatives. We're talking pieces of glass, look like window glass, but with negative on it, and they're about 8 by 10. But my son Tristan, who works with me on these books, he's a graphic designer and a photo editor and a layout editor. Oh, thank God I have him.
You lucked out with that, didn't you, Linda?
I did because
You
I couldn't.
trained him well.
I couldn't do this without him. He's got a degree. I didn't train him.
You raised and
I
reared
did.
him.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did homeschool him.
Yeah,
So
you raised and reared him
yeah,
well.
but he processes all of the images we get and makes them
incredible.
look fabulous in the book. Because I can tell you right now, they don't look that good when I first scan them. He makes them
Right.
look great. But Draper's was so proud of what they did that
Yeah.
they took pictures of everything. Unfortunately, when they took pictures of the workers, they don't write down who the workers
Right.
are unless they're the bigwigs in
Right,
the
of
company.
course.
So I have all these pictures of workers. There's not a ton of them,
Yeah.
but they're all
Yeah,
anonymous.
the worker bees,
Yeah. They were just
the hands and feet and hearts and souls who
Yes.
built Draper to what it became.
exactly, and they were sometimes the brains too,
Yeah.
because Drapers would hire people who were smart and could make patents for them,
Yeah.
and then because they made the patents while they were working, the patents would belong to the Draper Company.
Well
and-
played.
Yeah.
Well
I was
played,
Really
sirs.
smart.
Yeah.
Really smart on. It started with
Savvy.
George Draper.
Very savvy.
Very savvy, very savvy businessman. And he knew the more patents you owned, the more you owned the textile industry.
Right.
And they did. They owned hundreds of patents, the Draper Company.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about Little Hopedale, the largest manufacturer of cotton automatic looms and textile equipment in the world. Not just in the state, not just in the country, but in the world. Now, that didn't last for 150
But
years,
still.
but still, off and on, they were the leader in the world. And you have a man who became governor
Yeah.
of Massachusetts from Hopedale. I mean, we had a princess living there. She wasn't an Italian princess. She married an Italian and
Okay.
kept the title. She was actually General Draper's daughter. But it's fascinating, the history of that town.
Yeah.
And a lot of really strong women in town. Because,
Love it.
I know.
Yes, we can. Rosie the Riveter.
The wealthy men had daughters, and
Yeah.
the daughters had money, and money gave them power and
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah.
And
And a little thing that so many, I feel like, unfortunately, is taken for granted, education.
yes,
Access to and
Yes.
the incredible types of education.
When the original community started, one of their money-making ventures was something called the Hopedale Homeschool.
Yeah.
And it was a school where people from Milford and Hopedale sent their kids to day school,
Yeah.
but they also had boarders that came and stayed
Yeah.
and lived in town, and they taught children.
Yeah.
And it was a private school. It was a paid
Like a
for
private
school.
charter type school.
Exactly, but the kids in Hopedale went for a reduced
Mm-hmm.
rate, so you had a very highly educated bunch of children growing up in town. So it was a
Yeah.
great thing, and a lot of the women went to college. They went to the new girls'
Yeah.
colleges. There was one right in Worcester.
Yeah.
That may have been started by a relative of mine named Eli Thayer. I know.
Wow.
I have to do more
If I
research.
had my glasses on, I would tilt them down.
Tip them down, yeah. It was called Oriad College, and it was for women. And it was in Worcester, and the Bancroft girls went there.
Yeah.
And that was, Sylvia Bancroft was she was the sister-in-law of George Draper. So
I
it
love
was
that.
all intertwined.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
my modern day Shiro, Malala Yousafzai,
Yes.
and she commented, one teacher, one child, one pen, and one book can change the world.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
girl power.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a survivor of a traumatic brain injury too.
Yeah.
And she's, oh my goodness, she's my mini superhero.
Yeah.
That's
Think of how much she has changed the
Yeah.
world since her injury.
Yeah.
She has totally changed the
totally,
world.
completely, and not just over in the Middle East.
No, gosh, no.
The whole world.
And she's so young.
I know.
It's just
She's, oh my goodness.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it really goes to show that for girls, for young women, and just for human beings in general, the biggest thing is do not ever let anyone set limitations on you.
Yep.
And I feel like the Drapers and everyone involved in the formation of Little Hopedale, they believed that before it was actually a saying or a well-known phrase.
You know, I think
they coined that phrase.
I think you're not wrong. George Draper's granddaughter, Fanny Osgood. She was the daughter of George Draper's daughter, Hannah Osgood. She became a golfer. She was one of the women who started the women's professional golf association, the PGA. And she started district nursing in Milford, Hopedale, and Mendon after the 1918 pandemic hit Milford so hard. She said, we have to start district nursing. Now, this is a woman who's growing up in the teens and 20s in Hopedale, and yet she can't start her own business because at that time she couldn't really do that, and she had a business brain. She was a slice of her grandfather's brain.
Incredible.
So she starts district nursing, and she runs it. And she died very early. She wasn't even 50. I think she was 47 when she died. It was heartbreaking.
What a loss.
And here, this woman was an athlete, so she should have been fairly healthy, but she actually wasn't, and she ended up dying. She and her mother died within months of each other.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
That's
absolutely
like
heartbreaking.
Total heartbreak.
And her sister, they were twins. Her sister actually went to Connecticut after she married and ended up in the General Assembly in Connecticut. She was one of the first women elected for the General Assembly in Connecticut.
Talk about girl power.
Yeah, her name was
again.
Hannah Townsend.
I
know.
I love
like,
hearing things like that.
It's that apple not falling far from the tree. I've got to assume that their mother would have been a woman that was pro-suffrage and pro-women's rights because her two daughters, the only daughters she had, twins, were that way. And it just would make sense. Unless they were totally, rebelling against mom. But I don't think so. I don't think so.
The seed was planted.
I think the seed was very much planted.
Of a mighty oak. Mighty oak tree.
The original community starts out pushing for women's rights in the 1840s.
That's
the 1840s. 80 years before women get the right to vote in this country. Yeah.
Wow. I've always I've known the timeline or the dates and such, but when you put it that way, it's just really like
it is.
And it's been a century of suffragism.
Yeah.
In this country.
Yeah.
And
the women who went to the first National Women's Rights Convention from Hopedale to Worcester in 1850, none of those women lived to get the right to vote in the country on a national level. None of them. Their daughters and granddaughters did, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They fought for a right they never received.
Yeah.
How heartbreaking is that? They were citizens of this country, but they were not given their citizenship rights until 1920.
Well,
and that's ludicrous.
And thank God for strong women who their legacy is more than everlasting. It was life-changing then, and it still is.
They were changing the world for another generation.
And generations to come.
Yes, and I think they thought they'd get that right, but they didn't. So they fought anyway.
Yeah, but they kept fighting.
Yep. And there were women in Hopedale that were against the right to vote too. You always have two sides. You always do. Hannah Osgood, who had the daughters who were so strong women. They're such strong women. Her cousin Anna Bancroft was against women having the right to vote.
Wow.
But she was one of the first women to sign up to vote in 1920 when she got the right.
Yeah.
So it's like she was against it, but then she's like, I've got the right, I'll do it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I've changed my mind.
I've changed my mind. Just a wee pivot.
Yeah, just slightly.
Just a wee pivot.
Yeah, just slightly.
Yeah.
But you have to have both sides.
Yeah.
But we got there.
Ebb and flow, and
we we got there in the end. And I've been voting since I first got my right at 18 because I was that first year that got the right. It was 21 and then it became 18 because I feel it's important. And people in Hopedale.
We owe it to
Yes,
these women.
We do.
We owe it to these women and their legacies and everything, and future generations to come.
It's true.
Not just of young girls, but of all young people.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's just,
if more young people voted, you guys could rule the world. Seriously, you could rule the world.
Yeah.
Get out there and vote. Oh,
Amen.
I'm stumping for something that's totally beyond the topic.
That's A-okay. And like I already said to you before we came on set,
Yep.
I would love if I could have an autographed copy of
I will
the
definitely.
book I already sent you through. I don't know if I brought out our pen.
I have a pen, so
Oh,
if we can't do it on air.
Yes.
I actually brought my orange Sharpie because the pages are shiny, so we have to use our Sharpie.
Aren't you fantabulous?
Yeah, I couldn't help myself.
I
so.
mean, I've always been a bookworm, always.
Good.
And
Good.
actually, my my June episode, I'll have to share that with you. You would really love
I'd
this.
love to
I
see
had
it. Yep.
an author, and he's also a publisher, and I'll have to get you one of his books. Really, really special. A read for everybody.
Nice.
And
Yeah, I believe in the written word. I mean, it's what I do.
yeah,
I spend a lot of my time transcribing old newspapers. That's where we get a
incredible.
lot of that information from. And writing is kind of my thing. But it's shifted to history after I got my master's degree, and I love it. I love it. But I always tell my students, history's in flux. History's always changing because we discover, say, a letter written by somebody, and suddenly history can change.
Yeah.
You know, it can change on a dime. So, you know, it's something you have to pay attention to. History is not set in stone. It can change.